政经关不了，关不了政经。各位同学，大家好，先祝大家母亲节快乐。大家看到这画面有没有吓一跳？今天的穿着有点奇怪，打扮有点邋遢，有点不修边幅，胡子没刮，到底怎么回事呢？因为我现在呢是没有回到家，在外头。原本今天节目可能会开天窗的，因为我原本预期今天晚上会到家，在美国的时间，然后在那里刚好做节目，就会做今天的节目。结果呢，我们全家在周末来到了 Las Vegas， 来干嘛呢？赌一把吗？不是，是因为我们家那个很爱打篮球的儿子比赛，跑到了 Las Vegas 来参加比赛。我们全家呢就跑来陪他。我觉得我们这些爸妈也是脑袋有点秀逗，又不是参加世界比赛，又不是参加什么威廉波特少棒赛，竟然全家大小陪着儿子来看他的篮球比赛。结果原本我在礼拜天要回家，然后我礼拜天晚上就可以录影，所以我既没有带录影的装备，也没带什么西装。来看球干嘛带西装？因为拉斯维加斯是沙漠，是一个很神奇的把这个沙漠变成了一个现代化都市的美国一个很特别的典范，所以它的昼夜温差很大。好，话讲回来，我看完球赛，本来今天这个时候晚上是应该回到家里面可以录节目的，结果来了一场我朋友说是在 Las Vegas 罕见他没碰过的，叫做 Sandstorm， 就是来了一个类似沙尘暴这样的东西，那有点像台风，整个城市就这个风起云涌啊，这个大风吹，所以原本的飞机从下午7点多，傍晚延到9点多，延到1点多，延到2点多，最后飞机没有办法起飞，所以呢，我没办法马上就赶回来录这个节目，不然今天的节目就要开天窗了。好，话说从头，今天这个节目呢，我们来分享一下一些比较特别的这个心得。好，我今天呢，就是我们周末的时候，全家陪着儿子来打篮球比赛。这什么比赛？是世界杯还是这个美国杯？都不是，就是一个小比赛。美国的这个教育就很特别，像我儿子喜欢打篮球，我就鼓励他打篮球。他的篮球打得不错，所以学校的教练就会叫他说：“你除了在学校参加校队以外，你要不要打一些这个社区自己组的一些球队？”所以这个教练呢，就跟其他的教练、别的学校的教练，大家组一些球队，所以他就跟其他学校的同年龄的组了一个校队。那我后来才发现说，美国这种不是只有篮球，打排球的、打羽毛球、打乒乓球的、做体操的，不管你小孩是不是那个打世界杯，他们都不管这些东西，他们就很开心的让孩子去参加这些球赛，然后到处去比赛。真的，这个是一个很特别的现象。你说以台湾来讲，一个初中生、高中生，如果不是为了打校队，也不是为了要将来念体育系，你说爸妈可能让他们在初3、高1、高2这种大家都在 K 书的时间，跟着社团，一会儿去台南打球，一会儿去高雄打球，一会儿去花莲住2个晚上吗？那是不可能的事情。可是美国的小孩子初高中，他们就是这样过日子的。所以我原本以为像我这样的爸妈是阿达玛孔古里塔卡派基，小朋友跑到拉斯维加斯去打球，我们就全家高兴的陪着他，买着机票跑到拉斯维加斯去看球，然后2天1夜就碰到这个sandstorm 就回不来，所以我今天就在这边做这个节目。好，我待会儿呢，我们要不要一边来放这个比赛的片段？我跟大家这个 share 一些，虽然不是什么精彩的球赛，但是就是很好玩。我从美国的这个青少年的运动，看到美国的对于这些青少年的教育，跟父母亲看待教育的一种心态。你看看哈，这场比赛不是任何正式的比赛，可是美国像这样的联盟，光是青少年的篮球，大大小小可能有超过2000个，你相信吗？就是说，比方说以加州来讲，他们光是在旧金山湾区就有好几个联盟，然后北加州又有好几十个联盟，然后在南加州呢又有几十个联盟，光加州在一个州大概有100个联盟。他们在干嘛呢？ 他们会分，比方说15岁的、16岁的、17岁的，他们是用年龄来分，然后16岁的人就一起打，有一个联盟，可能这个联盟是由5队组成的或10队组成的，他们就在这个联盟当中不断的互相比赛，然后比赛比到这个联盟的冠军呢，他们就去挑战另外一个联盟，也是同样年龄的，比方说北加州有3个联盟 ABC 3个联盟 ，A 联盟自己打自己组，打完了以后呢，就会跟 B 联盟联络说，你们的冠军队或者你们的前3名我们一起来比，就这样子玩得不亦乐乎而且你不可思议的是什么？我去看小朋友的比赛，到了门口我才知道原来看球赛是要钱的，儿子打球，爸妈看球赛要钱。你知道看一场球赛多少钱吗？15块美金，15块美金相当于400块台币你不是在看那个 Stephen Curry 打球是看你儿子打球要400块台币。家里面你看我们家啦啦队今天有4个人，因为母亲节嘛，我们当然要出来玩，4个人看一场球赛花掉我2000块天哪，美国真是好野人住的国家这一般人还是没事别来。就我以为我是这个绝无仅有的阿达玛孔古里的父母亲，就没想到他球队里面2/3的父母亲都陪来了。我们就一群父母亲，然后带着小孩子，也不是国手，就为了兴趣组成的社团，就这样子傻傻的南北到处征战。然后我们就要这个父母亲有工作的，可能就是一个来陪。那如果两个人都没事，小孩子又不上学的，就全部都来陪。这是一个美国很奇特的文化，我真是大开眼界。好，我们刚刚看的那个球赛当中，你就看看，在美国球场上呢，打球就是一种很好的学习以加州来讲，美国真的是一个 melting pot， 就是真是一个种族大熔炉。球场上当然是黑人，篮球场上当然是黑人的天下。可是你知道，我现在在美国加州，我突然发现，要找到真正的白人还真的不容易啊。然后你慢慢的你这样看过去，从皮肤浅色到皮肤深色，各种各样，像光谱这样子，每一种人都有，而且高的、胖的、矮的、瘦的，所以我难怪觉得这个美国这个国家的包容力可能稍微大了一点，就是比一般的其他亚洲那种单一民族种族国家要更有比较不同的心胸，面对不同的种族，因为他们平常看惯了，而且性别几乎没有歧视。你看这个球场当中，我刚刚讲的那些联盟打篮球不是男生的权利你看那些小女孩绑了个辫子，然后白白净净的，或者是说看起来文文静静的，全部在上面打篮球，然后满地滚。虽然球技没有顶好，可是他们就很开心的去参加联盟，到处打球，然后赢了也好，输了也好，很开心，下次又打下面一个联盟，就这样认真煞有其事的在课外活动。我心想想，在我念书的时候，我们这个年纪，什么初3、高1、高2，除了念书之外，你还有什么活动啊？当然，现在的台湾社会教育有一点点改变，可是跟美国这个国家比起来，跟他们的教育比起来，我们真的是一群书呆子啊！你看他们这个光篮球就这样，他们里面的同学还有人参加什么越野的啦、击剑的啦，就到处去比赛也不怕耽误功课。对他们来讲，功课不是最重要的，只是他们这个现阶段要照顾的可能5、6件事情中的一件而已。所以他们会利用这个整个周末，母亲节的周末，这个大周末呢，跨州去比赛。然后你看2天就回到家。如果一般父母会想说，哇，你2天没读书他们没有这个概念，所以我就觉得很特别，有点大开眼界。好，今天呢真的是碰到了这个 sandstorm， 所以我的飞机就一直 delay， 没办法，我只好把这一集在家里面回来，我把飞机延到明天，然后把它录完。那还好，今天呢我上星期有一个专访，这次是我受访，用英文全程受访，谈谈我这个逃犯心得，谈谈蔡同学的论文们，以及谈谈两岸关系。好，我们进一段广告之后呢，再回来看一看这个就是我接受专访的整个过程。
to be, someone to see, someone to love. I'm wandering free, can someone please maybe take me for a ride? I've been trying to forget, I'm tired of trying. I've walked this road, there's not an end. I've surfed the sea, found no one there. What's the point of staying till the end if you have no one on your end? It's like watching the sunrise, high tide, with no one by your side. It's like you're at a movie, then you see a lover walking by. It's like the sunlight in my eyes, under the apricot orange sky. Whoa, I hope I'll find someone. I've walked this road, there's not an end. I've served.
正经关不了正经。今天这个打扮有点邋遢，有点不修边幅，胡子没刮。因为今天这个时候我本来应该在家的，就后来因为飞机碰到什么叫做 sandstorm， 就是沙尘暴，所以就一直延，没办法，是要知道明天早上呢再坐飞机回家。我去哪了呢？我去拉斯维加斯，不是去赌一把，是全家陪我们家小儿子，应该在台湾是9年级吧，应该是初3，去干嘛呢？去打篮球，打世界杯吗？不是，只是社团。这个美国人还真的很认真哈，他们真的就是这样子，小朋友喜欢发展什么就鼓励他，然后就去参加比赛，然后加州北加州打一打，打赢了就跟南加州交流，南加州打赢了就跟隔壁州交流，然后目的也不是要什么为了升学，也目的也不是为了要念体育系，就是为了兴趣。我其实今天跟这个同学的家长啊聊天，学到了一课。你知道这个老美很有趣，他这个篮球队很有趣。你这样一眼看过去，你不会问，你也不想问，你也根本不想知道他们到底是什么人，因为皮肤从白得到黑的，很黑的，黑的发亮的，这个被下被泡泡又咪咪的，就是各种各样的，然后黑色的、棕色的、黄色的、黄棕色的、黑棕色的，就各种各样的人种，大家其实就是处得很好，大家就一起打篮球，一起很开心。那我跟这些家长呢也在那边聊天，结果我就不经意嘛，因为小孩初3了，我就说，你们家那个就 Thompson 他要念什么东西呢？他就那美国家长就一看我一眼，他说 I don't know。我说你们父子没有讨论过，小孩比较有兴趣什么？他说 no， 他说这个他们就一直在变。小时候看卡通，看着看着就说他想要去学漫画，画漫画，然后呢长大的时候打篮球，打完篮球他就说他想去做那个，将来长大想要去设计球鞋，然后过一阵子以后又说呢，他想去当这个教练。他说这个小孩子啊，从小到大的兴趣一直变。他跟我说，他说我这做父母亲的呢，就是他想学什么，有能力就让他学，然后就跟我讲了一个让我觉得，我其实觉得很好好的思考一下。你知道，到这把年纪，我突然思考了一个问题，就是一个做父母亲的到底要传递什么东西给孩子？你对孩子的期望是什么？我从这个老美的身上得到了一个答案，对我来讲是发人深省。他跟我说，他说其实 I don't care， 他说我其实不太在乎孩子到底要念什么学什么，他说因为他们一直在变， 他说我对孩子只有2个期望。我睁大了眼睛，我想说，是不是什么工作稳定啊，什么这个找个铁饭碗啊，或者是当医生之类的，这不是台湾人的想法吗？工程师吗？或当老师吗？比较稳定。他说他只有2个要求，2个期望，一个叫做 be good， 一个叫 be happy。我听了真的觉得蛮有感触的，就是做个好人，做个快乐的人，这是他对他孩子的唯2的期望。那我就想说，对，这其实给了我一些想法。对啊，人生不就如此吗？ Be good, be happy， 剩下的东西不是就多余的吗？剩下的东西就跟着上帝给你的天分走，跟着机缘走，干嘛那么争竞呢？你看我们的亚洲文化，从小补习，数学要好，要么英文要好啊。你有听过家长说从小补篮球的吗？或者补羽毛球的吗？好像比较少啦，对不对？可是他们就是把这些东西都看着一模一样的重要。那亚洲文化给我们带来就是人要出人头地啊，不是 be good 或者是 be happy。good 我想绝大部分啊，除了这个可能蔡同学比较不太在乎以外，大部分的父母亲其实是会希望孩子做个好人。那么除此之外 be happy 好像不是很重要的，对不对？从小到大好像爸妈从来没有问过我说你快乐吗？只问我说功课做了吗？考试考第1名了吗？对，所以我就觉得我们的这个东方文化、亚洲文化其实不是只有台湾，不是只有中国大陆、香港，你看看日本，看看韩国，一天到晚那个高考，就他们的大学联考考完就不断有人想不开的哦。然后日本人也是这样子，一试定终身，然后你什么大学毕业，你就进入什么样的俱乐部，一生的标签跟着你，会不会太沉重啊？所以我其实蛮庆幸的哦，就是因为蔡阿嬷跟她的党羽的关系，我就让孩子在美国受教育，然后慢慢去体会到这个西方文化的一些差异，然后慢慢去体会到他们这些文化所传递的一个让我觉得我颇为认同的价值，不错，叫做 be good, be happy。在今天母亲节呢，美国的母亲节，跟大家分享美国的母亲、美国的父亲的一般这种中产阶级，他们对孩子的期望。好，接下来今天因为不修边幅，你知道胡子，如果你仔细看我胡子没刮，那我就来把我在上个月接受美国的一个网红吧，或者是一个政治人物，他自己拥有一个广播电台，还有一个媒体，他的一个专访。好，我的这个专访是访问我的人呢，他是台湾的台美人的第2代，他的名字叫做 Dr. Ronald Joseph Lin， 因为他的爸爸其实是我们节目中的铁粉，那他爸妈都是我们的铁粉啊，所以他在我们东岸的这个杨明浩医师的介绍之下，就来跟我做了一个访问啊，那我就很开心，因为这个孩子蛮争气的，就是这个年轻人了，他念法律，所以在美国念了JD 就是法律的博士，然后念了一个 LLM， 然后又到中国大陆去念了一个 SJD 法学的博士。那听说杨明浩医师说，他在这个东岸呢很积极，想要从政，那也是台美人很优秀的第2代。他说想说，从这个地方的一些行政官员、县议员 county 这个就是美国的 county 相当于我们的县吧。然后开始一步一步的想要从政，所以刚刚开始，他的媒体我跟大家分享一下啊，他是有一个广播媒体叫做 www.am970， 然后theanswer.com theanswer.com， 然后他还有一个叫做 www.rumble.com， 那么他的节目叫做 Real Talk with Ronnie。每个星期天晚上8点钟的现场，此外呢，他还有他的脸书去分享。那他是一个刚刚起步，想要逐步从政的一位台湾来的后裔第2代，好，所以他呢很积极的去做自媒体， 那他的媒体虽然你可以看到，就是暂时没有说很大的这个关注量，不过关注他的很多都是美国的政界的这些参众议员跟他们的助理，因为 Ren'ai 等于是他们的一些政治从政的伙伴或者调咖，所以他的这个访问在广播节目当中，在电视，在 YouTube 上面，在他的脸书上面，他都帮我做了很多的这个推播，大家有空也去关心一下这一位从政的在美国的台湾人的第二代 Ren'ai Talk 啊，他 Real Talk with Ren'ai 啊，星期天晚上8点钟的这个节目。好，他的专访我呢，因为他的英文比中文好，他很谦虚，英文变成他的母语，他中文还不错啊，我可以这么说，比起绝大部分的在美国的从台湾移民的第二代来讲啊，在美国出生的这些。他的英文算是他的中文算是很好的，然后公台语买通啊，所以还不错。好，我们来看看以前我在我的节目当中都是我访问别人，那这一次是我用英文受访，他跟我谈了一定要谈的话题，蔡同学的论文门，我花了绝大部分的时间谈论文门，希望透过他，也透过他的管道，跟一些跟媒体的联系，还有一些从政的美国人啊，因为他们听不懂这个国语，看不懂中文，所以透过这个英文的访问，让他们了解论文门。而且这个 Ren'ai 呢也问我了一些有关于两岸三地，还有乌克兰跟这个俄罗斯之间的一些发生的事情，对我的这个台湾观点来看，怎么看这些东西？好，我们接下来呢就来看看这个节目是这个 Real Talk Show Real Talk with Ren'ai。Welcome
back to Real Talk with Ren'ai. We are now airing on Salem Media, on Salem Radio via AM 970, The Answer, every Sunday night from 8 to 9 p.m. On our show tonight, we have a very special guest. Dr. Dennis Peng was actually on my show a couple of weeks ago. But, you know, his story was such a big story that show that aired on Facebook Live reached over 3,000 views in like a matter of days. So I decided that it would be a good opportunity to introduce Dr. Dennis Peng and his story to a much wider audience. And I was very pleased that Dr. Peng has agreed to come on my show on Salem Radio. Dr. Dennis Peng was a famous TV personality and political commentator on Formosa TV, which is the biggest television station in Taiwan for many, many, many years. So I can't stress how famous and how important that Dr. Peng is. Everybody in Taiwan knows him. He currently is a professor at National Taiwan University, which is by far the best university in Taiwan. No other university even comes close. I believe National Taiwan University is basically like the Harvard of Taiwan. So he is a professor there. He is a personality, a commentator. And, you know, in 2019, he reported on a story that got a lot of media press, right? And you know what? I'm not going to tell the story. I will let the doctor himself tell the story. So Dr. Peng, thank you for coming on Real Talk with Ren'ai.
Thank you, Ronnie, Dr. Lin, and my dear friends.
Yeah, so Dr. Peng, for all the audience, for the listeners that are listening to this program, why don't you introduce yourself to them?
Okay, my name is Dennis Peng, in Taiwanese name Peng Wenzheng. I'm a YouTuber now, and hosting a political show called True Voice of Taiwan. And this talk show aims to deliver a true voice, comments, or facts without commercial or political conflict of interest, if possible. And I've been a journalism professor and once the director at the Graduate School of Journalism at Taiwan University for 20 years. I earned my journalism PhD from the University of Wisconsin. What I love very much, my second hometown, Madison, Wisconsin, in 1995. And I've been living in Taipei, Taiwan my whole life until last June. A big life encounter occurred. My whole family, my wife, 3 kids, and a Formosan hunting dog, we moved to Bay Area, California since last June.
All right. And what exactly was, like, what caused you and your wife, your 3 kids, and your Formosan hunting dog
Yeah.
to uproot from Taiwan and move to California. What exactly happened?
All right. I'm a fugitive now. My formal. Okay, let me put the story. Long story short, that's because I involved Taiwan's president's degree fraud scandal. All right. My backstory is that the first time I heard this thesis scandal was in 2015. Miss Chai Ing-wen's PhD dissertation, in UK they called it doctoral thesis. The President Chai's thesis couldn't found in any library in the world in 2015. At that time, I didn't pay much attention on that news. I thought it's again a fake news in the presidential campaign. 4 years later, in 2019, this topic was heated again during the presidential campaign. My colleague, also my colleague Professor Ho, who is the emeritus law professor at Taiwan University, she held a formal press conference, accused President Tsai's degree fraud scandal. I began looking into Tsai Ing-wen's doctoral thesis on my primetime TV talk show in Taiwan. This sensitive topic widespread and gets some attention in the lead up of Taiwan's 2020 presidential election. After a couple of weeks, I was sued in September 23rd, 2019 by President Tsai Ing-wen personally for a slander criminal charge. The Taiwanese prosecutor later issued a criminal arrest warrant and a statute of limitations for 13 years during my visiting children in the United States on November 19 last year. I might face 2 to 5 years of prison time if proved guilty. This is the first time ever a Taiwan citizen becomes the first person in Taiwan's history to be sued by a sitting president. Not only this, I received much harassment for my work on this story, enduring audits, receiving death threats, and being followed. But I get used to it.
Wow. Okay, so let me just recap this story for the listeners who might be tuning in now. So you were a very big TV journalist in Taiwan for many, many years. This story of President Tsai's PhD came about in 2015. Now, when you yourself first heard about this story, you even thought it was fake news, right?
Mhm.
But then around, I believe 2019, another professor by the name of Professor Ho started to talk about this. And I believe you said she had a press conference, right?
Yes.
Where she basically stated to the world that President Tsai's PhD degree from the London School of Economics, which she had graduated from, I believe in the late 1980s, right? She asserted that this PhD degree is false because
Yes.
upon inspection of her thesis from LSE, a thesis could not be found, right? Her doctoral thesis from LSE was never produced. And we all know, if you have, studied for a doctorate degree, that one of the prime components of a PhD is that you need to furnish, or you need to write a thesis, right? A doctoral, dissertation. So this dissertation was never found. And then from that point on your primetime TV show, you started to delve further into this topic, right? You talked about it more and more. And then during one of your visits to the US in 2019, when you were visiting one of your kids, right? The prosecutor in Taiwan issued a charge of, I believe it was a charge of libel, right?
Right.
And, it was against you. And with that charge, it carries a statute of limitations of 13 years, which effectively means that you cannot go back into Taiwan for the next 13 years unless you want to be arrested, prosecuted, and sentenced for up to 2 to 5 years in Taiwanese prison. So that in effect makes you a fugitive of
Yes.
Taiwan, right? And you are the first and only Taiwanese citizen in the history of Taiwan to
Right.
be sued by a sitting Taiwanese
Right.
president. Okay,
Yes,
so
I think
got
ever
that
and
one.
ever.
Okay, all right. So why don't you walk us back on this story, right? So you even said yourself that you thought it was fake news back in 2015. What changed your mind? Why did you decide to talk about this story more and more in 2019?
Okay, I think it is common sense that without qualified doctoral thesis, what we call the dissertation, a PhD candidate would not be awarded a doctoral degree. That's iron rule. I mean, Ms. Tsai Ing-wen says she received her PhD from the London School of Economics in 1984. However, nobody could locate her doctoral thesis before 2019. President Tsai continuously claimed to the public that she earned a 1.5 PhD degree from LSE in 2 years at her age of 27. Tsai's exaggerated statement that due to her excellent achievement in international trade, she is awarded an additional 0.5 PhD degree. Such
Can I
ridiculous.
just ask you though?
Yeah.
How is that possible for someone to earn 1.5 degrees? I mean, I have a PhD, right? And I believe it's just 1 degree.
Yep.
So how do you earn that extra half a degree? How does that work?
And that's why she can be a president, I think.
Rambling, trying to find someone to be, someone to see, someone to love. I'm wandering free, can someone please maybe take me for a ride? I've been trying to forget, I'm tired of trying. I've walked this road, there's not an end. I've surfed the sea, found no one there. What's the point of staying till the end? If you have no one on your end, it's like watching the sunrise at tight with no one by your side. It's like you're at a movie, then you see a lover walking by. It's like the sunlight in my eyes under the apricot orange sky. Whoa, I hope I'll find someone. I've walked this road, there's not an end. I've served.
震惊关不了，关不了震惊。好 ，Real Talk with Ronnie 呢？这位 Dr. Ronnie Joseph Lin 啊，林博士，Ronald Joseph Lin 啊，从台湾去的第二代林博士呢，他访问我有关于刚刚谈到了一些论文门的事情，然后接下来呢，还会分享一些问我一些有关于台湾目前的处境的问题，来看看我对这件事情的看法。好，那我们接下来呢，我们就继续这段专访。
All right, such ridiculous statement on not just in her public speech, but also in her autobiography, a written autobiography. In Chinese, we call 洋葱炒蛋与小英便当. This also attracted the attention of some scholars and public attention to read her doctoral thesis and to discover Tsai's 38 years of academic fraud. University of North Carolina at Charlotte Business School professor Huang Lin filed investigation this scandal and published a 50-page report suggesting that Tsai Ing-wen never received a PhD. One key piece of evidence is the insistence by the University of London's library that it never received a copy. When presented with these evidences, Tsai Ing-wen responded by suing the three scholars of defamation: me, University of North Carolina professor Lin, and Emeritus Law School professor of Taiwan University, Ms. Ho. Since then, my show, The True Voice of Taiwan, kept investigating, uncover, and comment on this scandal every single day. Let me put it in more details. On the same day, the presidential office announced their intention to litigate, then legislator Apollo Chen Xuesheng discovered that all documents related to Tsai Ing-wen's time as a professor at the universities in Taiwan were quietly classified and designated a top secret. They can't be classified until December 31st, 2049. After our investigation and the press conference, Tsai sent a copy of so-called her thesis to the Women's Library and London School of Economics and Political Science on June 28th, 2019. Well, I also went to the London School of Economics and Political Science and the University of London, searched all libraries, and interviewed the librarians and school officials. They told me this so-called thesis never received. It's not missing. It's never received since 1983 until 2019. A different format, different layout personal copy was sent to LSE's women's libraries. But it is not the thesis. It's just a personal note. Another scholar graduated from Oxford, Dr. Xu Yongtai, published an article in the Chinese language US-based newspaper World Journal 世界日报 on September 18, 2019. In this article, Dr. Xu shared his thoughts about Tsai Ing-wen's publicized dissertation. She raised several questions regarding the thesis. First, this thesis, supposedly written in 1983, was rather unpublished overall. Not only that, but the way the thesis was formatted indicated it was composed using technology available only after 1984. There were a lot of handwritten corrections and trace of whiteouts. The thesis also used American spelling rather than the British spelling, which is unusual for the London School of Economics and Political Science. The total so-called thesis ended up with more than 500 spelling and typo errors. And after at least more than hundreds of inquiries of Tsai's mysterious degree over the last 3 years, the University of London finally posted a so-called statement on the school's web, although it's still an anonymous statement. The only response is on February 2nd, 2022. The statement confirmed that Tsai earned her degree in 1983, but they didn't explain why there was no thesis until 2019. The University of London says it remains unclear why the thesis was never published, never cited, and even nobody had ever read. They didn't explain nor has any intention to investigate it. My team and I launched an independent investigation into Tsai's thesis. Everything we found suggested there were extensive cover-ups, possible quid pro quo donations made to education institutions, and forged documents. Among the most interesting discoveries is the trip Tsai Ing-wen took to London School of Economics in 2011, where she met with several school officials and even attempted to submit an improper thesis into the University of London's library. President Tsai Ing-wen claimed she graduated from the London School of Economics PhD program in 1984. However, my team uncovered records indicating that she was back in Taiwan by 1983, teaching at Suzhou University, which is Dongwu Daxue. Taiwan's president's office changed its story. This is a common occurrence, with officials constantly changing their story to fit my findings. Also, in its supposed 30-year existence, President Tsai Ing-wen's thesis was never once cited in any other academic publication. Not a single library in the world held a copy of Tsai Ing-wen's thesis prior to 2019. Furthermore, records of Tsai Ing-wen's thesis in digital database were found to be created rather recently, as opposed to in 1984, when it should have been created. The London School of Economics and Political Science's reputation has taken a battering over links with the Libyan regime, which include a donation of it's around $2 million US from a charitable foundation run by Zaif Gaddafi, who studied at the LSE. And just as Zaif Gaddafi's donation was used to set up a North Africa research program in 2007, when Tsai was vice premier, an anonymous donation around 480,000 pounds to the LSE was assigned to Ms. Shi Fanglong to set up a Taiwan research program with LSE. Shi, this lady who claimed to hold 2 doctorates from LSE, was Tsai's close friend. Dr. Shi has publicly represented LSE Taiwan research program by covering up Tsai's academic fraud conducted in 1983 and in 1984, and is still going on. And some scholars in the United States and United Kingdom asked Information Commission Office, which is ICO, using the Freedom of Information Act, to release Tsai's VIVA, which is oral defense result, in 1983, including Tsai's oral defense time, place, examiner's name, and results. These requests has been refused by University of London, the London School of Economics and Political Science, and the Information Commissioner's Office in United Kingdom, because they say that this information is protected by the Act of Privacy. And several scholars, including me, sued by, we also sued the University of London and LSE at the British Tribunal Court, and we are still waiting for a long battle.
Okay. So I believe, the last time you were on my show, I asked you this question, right?
Mm-hmm.
I said, President Tsai, she attended the LSE back in the
Right.
1980s, right? And granted, back then, perhaps the archiving system wasn't as sophisticated as it is today, right? Because today we are in the age of internet, right?
Yes.
So could it just be possible that her thesis was written, it just wasn't saved?
Okay, a normal doctor no matter back to 1980s, 70s, or 60s, if all three library has lost, your dissertation was lost, at least you yourself should keep it, right? At least your parents should keep it, right? Okay, I think more than 10 people, including my ex-girlfriends, they kept my dissertation, okay?
Wow, it seems like you had a lot of ex-girlfriends.
No. So
now, when President Tsai went to the London School of Economics, she must have had classmates, right?
Yeah.
So my question is, during that time, were the dissertations of her classmates found?
This is very, very weird story. President Tsai has no classmate.
Really?
We interviewed several doctoral students in 1983 and 1984, around that period. They don't know this lady. And Tsai only showed one picture that she say she and her sister photoed in the London School of Economics for the purpose that her sister is waiting for her oral defense. But it was found that background was in Boston, Massachusetts. And she doesn't even have any like transcript or any other solid evidences that can, prove that her study in the London School of Economics and Political Science in 1983 or 1984. It's very, very weird. And we have a lot of friends, a lot of classmates, professors can, stand out and prove that, hey, Dennis Peng, my classmate, Ronald Ling, hey, we studied together. But President Tsai, no friend, no classmate.
Wow. Okay. So for all the listeners who are tuning in, so this thesis that you had been questioning on, it was not in the records for LSE for all these years until 2019, right? 2019, this thesis, it magically came about. And when this thesis was examined, it was very clear that it was written using technology that was post 1984. And what makes the story even weirder is that, as you mentioned, no one in London School of Economics around that time remembered President Tsai as their classmate.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Or maybe someone remember but didn't speak out. I don't know.
Okay.
Trying to find someone to be, someone to see.
震惊关不了，关不了震惊。好，今天的节目的装扮有点特别，这个打扮有点邋遢，因为我被困在 Las Vegas。原本陪小朋友去 Las Vegas 比赛啊，比篮球，那要回加州，结果碰上了这个叫 Sandstorm， 叫做沙尘暴吧。哦，我听说台湾有比较严重的地震，好，希望大家都平安。地震的疫情，再加上地震加上疫情啊，台湾现在可能处在一个压力蛮大的状况。不过没关系啊，圣经上说就是在患难中也要这个欢欢喜喜，因为欢喜呢，这个患难生忍耐，忍耐生老练，老练生盼望，盼望不至于羞耻。跟大家分享，就是在患难中也要欢欢喜喜。好，接下来我接受了这个美国的台美人第二代 Dr. Lin， 他是法学博士，然后法学硕士，还有法律博士啊。他在美国念的 JD 跟 LLM， 在中国大陆念的 SJD。有空大家呢去关注他的脸书，关注他的 YouTube， 因为他是一个刚刚开始起步，打算在美国从政的一位台湾的到美国移民的第二代。好，接下来呢有一些Ronnie 对我的这个访问，谈到了一些我下一步的计划，还有就是我对于台湾未来的局势、两岸关系的看法。
Right.
So let me ask you something, Dr. Peng. Assuming, and let's just suppose that perhaps this story is true, right? Perhaps that President Tsai somehow didn't have a thesis, it was fabricated. What are the implications of that to Taiwan?
Well, I think it's a matter of value. I should say that from this thesis scandal, I see how vulnerable the Taiwan's media system, the administrative system, and the government, how vulnerable they are. It's really miserable, and well, I think there are several indicators that I feel disappointed. The first one is President Tsai's violation of the freedom of press. President Tsai uses the taxpayers' money to bribe and control the media so that nothing negative about her would be aired. The only exceptions is the Taiwan TV channel called CTI TV News becomes the owner. This CTI TV was shut down, was closed by Tsai, and the owner was ranked as the wealthiest person in Taiwan, which allowed the CTI TV to fight against Tsai. And the CTI TV News was shut down by Taiwan National Communication Commission, NCC, in November 2020. And after its news channel was shut down, the CTI TV moved to YouTube as what I did. And very soon, over 2.7 million of the Taiwanese population downloaded its app with YouTube. And on October 28th, 2021, Tsai's Legislative Assembly passed amending articles in the organic law of the National Communication Commission, NCC, a government authority with all commissioners appointed by Tsai's administration can ban internet content.
Okay.
And I think Tsai wholly violates Taiwan's freedom of the press. And also, I think President Tsai abused the freedom of speech. On December 29, 2019, President Tsai's administration passed the Anti-Infiltration Act. The Anti-Infiltration Act, they say, act in the existing Social Order Maintenance Act. That's what we call Social Order Maintenance Act. Allow President Tsai's administration to impose high fines or 5 years of the imprisonment prosecution against those who cast Tsai or her administrations in a negative light. Moreover, police can harass victims and arrest them on charges of a criminal offense without requiring a warrant.
Okay, and this is all under the recently passed law in Taiwan, the social, what is it again?
So we call it social maintenance law.
Okay, the social maintenance law, which was meant to basically keep order on the social media platforms, right? Now, let me ask you something. So, what do you think? What are your thoughts on the notion of free speech in Taiwan? Do you think it's dead? Do you think it's still there? What do you think?
I think Taiwan's most threats are not from missiles, not from China, nor the U.S.-China relations, but Taiwan herself.
Okay.
I think the gradually losing democracy is the biggest crisis of Taiwan. And I think the thesis gate scandal brings into question that is Taiwan still a democratic country as it has been? And I think the president's integrity and the credibility of Taiwan's government is rather important than anything else. Throughout the investigation, the government has mobilized substantial assets to hinder the efforts at every turn. The story exposes a problematic abuse of power at the highest level of government in Taiwan. It shows how Taiwan's bureaucratic and judicial system are vulnerable to corruption.
Okay. So, according to you, the biggest threat facing Taiwan is not necessarily China or U.S.-China relations. The biggest threat facing Taiwan today is Taiwan itself, right? But speaking of the issue with China, right? What do you think is the future of China-Taiwan relations? Do you think Taiwan will eventually go back to China, or how do you think that pans out?
Well, first of all, a principle is that no matter what, the decision about Taiwan's future should only be decided by 26 million Taiwanese people's free will, period. However, we as Taiwanese people and government, on the other hand, should and ought to do our own best to maintain a good relationship with China, our neighbors, and also our brothers and sisters. And I don't think the war will break out between China and Taiwan, because I do trust Chinese wisdom. And what Taiwan should do is, the Bible once said, shall love the Lord, thy God, with all their heart, and with all their soul, and with all their strength, and with all their mind, and their neighbor as their self. And as you would that man should do to you, do ye also to them likewise. I think the only key principle to maintain the world peace is never do to others what you don't want others do to you.
Right. Well, that's a very wise saying, right? But I mean, so do you really believe in your heart of hearts that war between China and Taiwan will never break out?
I trust Chinese wisdom.
Okay.
And I think that there are always a win-win-win situation among Taiwan, China, and the United States. It's a small world,
Right.
a super high-tech world. And also, on the other hand, it's a nuclear world. No one can win in a hostile international relations.
Okay. But, as we see right now, the situation with Russia, going into Ukraine. The fact that America has, in some sense, it's not being respected now on the world stage. That's why countries like Russia are going into other nations, right? So, given that fact, are you worried that perhaps China might see this as a good chance to go into Taiwan because the U.S. leadership is pretty weak now?
I don't see the crisis right now between Russia and Ukraine will happen in Taiwan. I think it's a different situation. The only thing I worry about is the Taiwanese people choosing the wrong president. And don't ever think that provocative can solve any problem. And however, that doesn't mean that the 26 million Taiwanese people cannot express or cannot even choose their own way of living. But I think overall speaking, it has to be in a peaceful way. So I'm still optimistic.
Okay. Where do you see the future of Taiwan on the world stage in the coming years? Do you think there's a role for Taiwan, or what do you think?
I do believe that Taiwan's role will be led by Taiwanese people themselves. And I would see the biggest threat to Taiwan is not from missiles, not from China, not from the international relations. It's from the losing democracy. That's the biggest crisis of Taiwan. It's gradually losing value. I think this is the most miserable thing in Taiwan. And through the Dist scandal, we really doubt, is Taiwan still a democratic country as it has been? That's what I worry most.
Okay. Now, President Tsai, she's currently serving her second term, right? In Taiwan, can you run for a third term?
No, but she tried to.
Oh, really?
She tried to. Yeah, she tried to do the learns from Putin and Xi Jinping. She tried to make laws.
Okay, so she's currently trying to change the law to allow herself to run for a third term. Her second term is up when? In 2024?
The May 20th, 2024. Yes.
Okay, so there is speculation that she will try to change that law and run for a third term.
I don't know, because now the DPP, which is her party, controls majority of the seats. So once what they want to do, they can do. I mean.
Okay. Now, let me ask you something, Dr. Peng. So you're currently, for all intents and purposes, a fugitive, right?
Right.
Of the Taiwanese government. Where do you see yourself in the coming years? Are you going to actively fight this prosecution, or are you just going to stay in the U.S. and just kind of wait it out for the next, 13, 14 years?
Okay, certainly, I wouldn't fight for only my case. I would certainly fight for the justice and what I call the value of Taiwan. Certainly, in a short period, I will be caught and sent to jail if I go back to Taiwan now. For myself, I dare not to go to jail, but I need to gather more evidences and announce these findings to the media and get public attention before I go to jail. So I do believe this ever largest degree fraud scandal will be uncovered soon, if not in a month, in a year, coming soon.
But you are, prepared to go to jail if it comes to that, right?
Right.
Wow. Okay, so you will go to jail for pretty much for exposing what you think is the truth, right? And I believe that you think it's important for the people to know the truth at all costs, right? Even if it means you going to jail and losing your freedom. Well, I think that's a pretty noble thing.
Well, as Bible said again, blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake.
Right.
For there is the kingdom of heaven. I do believe this ever-largest degree again, this degree fraud scandal again will be uncovered soon.
Okay. But do you have any like immediate plans to go back to Taiwan within the next few years or no?
Probably in next few weeks, if necessary. I'm ready. Actually, you know, when I visit the United States, I only bring one suitcase to the United States. I thought I would come back to home in a couple weeks, but I was, so I can go back anytime because I am clean. I didn't make any mistakes.
Right.
I just do what a journalist should do. That's all.
Right. But the moment you step foot onto Taiwanese soil, you will be arrested, right?
Certainly.
Wow. And that's
For
something
sure.
that you are prepared to face. Well, I think that's a pretty brave thing to, face down. But in the meantime, before you go back to Taiwan, you still broadcast every single night from your YouTube channel, right? And the name of your YouTube channel is True Voice of Taiwan.
Yes.
This is a show that you air nightly, right? On a
Right.
daily basis. I
Yes.
think you even air on Christmas. So you air every single day and you talk about this thesis gate. And so for all the listeners that are listening and to all the viewers who are watching, please check out Dr. Dennis Peng's page on YouTube. You can search for it, True Voice of Taiwan. Now, I understand that your show is broadcasted in Mandarin, right? However, you do have an English version of the show that comes out like once every 2 weeks, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, great.
Uh-huh.
So Dr. Dennis Peng's show, True Voice of Taiwan, you can find it on YouTube. He's got over 300,000 followers, a very big star, a very big name in Taiwan. And, we hope you don't go back to Taiwan because I don't want to see you prosecuted. But if you do have to go back, we wish you the best of luck. And we hope to have you on our show again really, really soon for an update on this situation, on your legal battle, and on everything else. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you. I also wish President Joe Biden can follow my program.
Oh, yeah. Well, we hope that President Joe Biden can also come on my show, right? I think that would be a pretty big show. But thank you, sir,
Okay.
for coming on, and we will talk to you very soon.
Thank you so much. Thank you.